Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the bridge. I think it's still morning. Anyway, today we have Cynthia Shelton with us, and she's got a wonderful story to share. And I want to tell you before we start that this is season 5, episode 4. And Cynthia, welcome. Sandy has a quote,
Welcome.
and after Sandy has her quote, we'll kind of dive right in. Okay, Sandy, what you got for us today?
I love this. I think this is an impressive statement. Always be on the lookout for the presence of wonder. And that's E.B. White. So no matter what you're dealing with in your life, keep your eye open for that wonderful moment, wonderful something that's happened in your life that you can be grateful for, because I think that brings you through to the other side when you're going through tough times.
Yeah,
Lovely.
true. Well, Cynthia, you've been with us before. It's so good to have you back. And this is such an enriching series,
Yeah.
the series on grief and loss. And so we're anxious to hear your story and your journey. And why don't you go ahead and begin?
All right, kiddo. Thank you both, Sue and Sandy. I just thank you for inviting me. First of all, holding the space to have this conversation, inviting me. I jumped right in when Sue announced what you were going to be talking about. Um, I want to talk about grief, but through suicide. And just bear with me if I get weepy, because it's a real difficult subject to talk about.
Right.
It's grief, but then 10 years ago, I lost my dad, and it's a very personal story. I'd been down at his house. We live on the same neighborhood, and I'd been down to his house having coffee with him and just enjoying him and enjoying my mom. She was right there. And we were having this little conversation, and I chose to argue with him. And he said something that was personal about my husband that wasn't true. And I stood up for my husband, and I was assertive, and I argued with my dad. And that was unusual for me because I usually have been a very
Right.
compliant, good daughter. Good, this kind.
Right.
I never argued
Right.
with my dad, and he usually lectured at the dinner table. We had lovely served homemade meals with my mother, and my father would get a subject, and we would all be quiet. I had 2 younger brothers. So this time I stood up for myself, and we argued. And um, I left. I didn't have any idea that it would be our last conversation. And when I left,
Wow.
I was home just doing things, working. And my mother, who's 83, ran all the way to my house and started beating on the door later that afternoon. She'd gone to bridge club that day, and she came running in the front door and said, "Your dad's killed himself." Um, I
Oh man, Cynthia.
Yeah, it hit hard, and I drove her back. We got in the car, and I drove her back. He had a small handgun that he'd kept hidden. I didn't know he had this, and he did it in the backyard, and he laid out a tarp so everything, all the mess would be cleaned up. Um,
Oh my goodness. So it's
and my first reaction was like grief, just overwhelmed. You're overwhelmed. But you guys, what I
right.
went through was anger. I mean, first of all, the guilt. Oh,
Right.
man, the guilt. The guilt was for me was like, oh my God, I caused this.
Mhm.
I spoke up. What would happen if I
Right.
hadn't spoken up? What would happen if I had stayed
Right.
longer and made sure everybody was happy? Um, so that guilt turned into real anger. I remember going on my walks, you know how you walk like this when you're really power walking, and I would
Right.
take my fist and shake it at the heavens, and I would just say, damn you, why did you do this? not only did he take his life
Right.
in the backyard, he left a very impersonal note to my mother telling her to be sure to water the tomato plants.
And had he been ill?
What'd you say?
Had he been ill? Had he been
No,
ill?
when I started to give him forgiveness, when I finally moved out of anger, he had lost the eyesight in one eye. And so I knew that he was struggling with it. And, after I went from anger to, from guilt to anger,
Mhm.
the next thing I went through was indifference. I sort of just hardened myself and I was indifferent. And I think that's the part I feel kind of embarrassed about telling you, is that I just took care of myself. And then reason why I'm here and why I wanted to share this was I wanted other people to know that it isn't my fault and it isn't one situation like the losing of eyesight. It had been building. He was depressed. And my brother told me, who's younger than me, that he knew he had the handgun. So my brother said,
Oh, really?
yeah, and my brother said he always told my brother, like at camping trips when the guys would go camping. I didn't get invited, but that he was going to do it by suicide. And I think that's a control thing, and I think he was still trying to control me. Like the dinner table discussions. We couldn't have discussions. We couldn't talk. And so you see, I'm still holding in some frustration and
Right.
anyway, I wanted to
it felt very one-sided, and so it didn't feel like a complete relationship because you couldn't feel safe being able to go back and forth. And when you're saying that you go through autopilot or you go into ignoring or whatever, I think that that's part of denial, is you just can't deal with it right then and there, and it looks different for everybody.
Right.
Yeah, denial, and it's survival. You know what I mean? For yourself.
Because I didn't want to feel guilty anymore. Damn it. I didn't think it was my fault.
No, and it sounds
right.
Your dad probably fought your whole life and his whole life with you becoming yourself. He wanted to control that.
Yeah.
And, who knows why, but he did it through silencing you.
Yeah.
And there was probably a whole lot through your whole life of, like you said, your brother got to go camping and you didn't get invited because whether or not it was because you were a girl or it just was because you were you, it isn't your fault, but and so you have worked on forgiveness, which is really, really hard when that anger was hot. Yeah. That's
well, and I think you cycle around, Cynthia. I don't think it's a one and done. I think as long as you live, there's going to be the moments where it's going to sideline you, and you're going to think, where did that come from? And it's because it is such a part. When you love deeply, Cynthia, you hurt deeply.
That's so true.
And I think that you wouldn't trade it. And I don't think you would trade it off. I don't think you'd say, well, I wish I would loved less. But because of that, it's a bigger struggle.
It's deep. It's deep. And you had been wounded deeply for a long time.
Well, the fact that I now look back at it and say, look at the control. So I've had to learn control. Like I think I do control, and I'm learning. This was my lesson. Was he ended it by saying, "I'm going to show you."
Yeah.
You argued with me. I'm going to show you by killing myself. I don't know, but why I say that, and I really don't. Anyway.
Yeah.
It feels that way. Whether or not that was it makes you feel that way because of the way the morning had gone.
Yeah, and guilt.
How did your mom deal with all this? How did your mom deal with all this?
She died of a broken heart, and I didn't understand broken hearts, but literally, I would sleep with her at night, many nights, and she would wake up in the middle of the night and just sob. And it's then that I learned that that note that he'd left about be sure to water the tomato plants. I mean, they have a marriage that happened during World War II, and
Yeah.
she was pregnant with me, and he still was 18 more months coming home. So that was 24 months of not knowing if your husband's going to live in the war. So it's they had a great marriage, 60 plus years.
Well, but it
Wow.
sounds like
Wow.
there was, I mean, if she would share how she felt controlled, I'm sure that was part of it too. And back then,
Yeah,
that was just part of the role.
right.
You know,
She was
roles
a
were
good mom,
Right.
good wife.
Mhm, mhm. And dutiful to water the tomato plants.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of a interesting analogy. You know, don't forget to water the tomato plants, because I'm still there. I'm in the tomato plants. You know?
Yeah, it's like
Yeah, yeah.
Well, and I think communication probably was limited. It makes me think about my grandparents. When my grandfather got the diagnosis that he was dying of cancer, grandma came into the hotel, into the hospital room, and he said, I guess we need to sell the farm. And that's all he said. She never got to sit down and discuss it with him. They never got to make a plan for what was going on other than, oh, I guess we're just going to sell the farm. But she had a lot of anger and bitterness inside her heart because she said, I could not be real with him. We could not be real with each other. But that was they were pretty stoic in their marriage. Mm-hmm. He was a pastor and she was a pastor's wife. And, back then you stand behind your man and you're not seen. And I think that it was interesting to watch my grandmother develop her character. I knew more about my grandmother after grandpa died because she was more real and sharing things that she hadn't shared before.
Of course.
Well, and I'm hunching that your mom was real good at swallowing her emotions as well.
Never remember her ever standing up to him, ever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And she probably had her things that she couldn't talk to him about either, because it would be like walking on eggshells, which is the dysfunction.
Right. Don't you think it's interesting that it is just one generation away? I mean, we're so close to this change in the way men and women communicate or two partners communicate, to be open and learn. I mean, my husband and I are going to celebrate our 60th anniversary in August of this year.
Oh, cool.
September, I guess it is. I better remember it. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, our whole marriage has been learning to be open communicators and not fight and walk away from each other, but to stay and work it through or come back the next day or whatever. We just so close to that generation of Sandy's grandparents. We're so close to.
We are, and those family patterns are passed down, even though we don't want them.
I know it.
And we weren't allowed to talk. Our moms weren't allowed to talk about it. And we have to step out. I mean, you did a real good piece of work for yourself when you talked to your dad, because you stood up for your own personal agency.
Right.
This is who I am. You don't have permission to talk to me about my husband.
Well, and it sounds like he had a plan for a long. It sounds like he had a plan for a long time, Cynthia. When you're hearing that your brother, that he would refer to that how he was going to go out. So he had this. This was premeditated for a long time, which hopefully helps with that release of guilt, because that was his.
Well, yeah, he was control of his own destiny. He planned it, and that's what he was going to do, and it wasn't a fault of anyone.
No, it really isn't. And even if I felt guilty, I'd rather feel proud that, hey, I learned to say, no, you can't say things that aren't right.
No.
And say it about my husband. I mean, I just.
No, no, you have to put your foot down.
Mhm.
And your husband and you had been married already for a long time.
Oh,
That was only 10
years,
years ago,
50 years.
you know, and,
Yeah.
you know, yeah, I understand that, but it's hard to step out and have those hard conversations. And
Right.
it actually is a gift that you got to have it before he left the earth. You know,
In
it's
a way,
healthier
you
for
are.
you.
And yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Did your mom struggle with guilt?
no. She just had a
Sad.
literally a grieving heart and
Mhm.
died within 5 months. She died,
Wow.
and
Yeah.
she just died of heart failure. I mean,
Yeah.
literally.
Literally heart failure. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. That,
So then, Cynthia, you got a double whammy because you lost your dad and you lost your mom in a short amount of time. So you must have felt like the air got knocked
It,
out of your
well,
lungs
and when you're the
over
oldest
something like
child,
that.
and I had two younger brothers,
Right.
and they've each passed since.
wow.
So you realize when your parents died that I'm the mantle now.
Yeah.
When families want Thanksgiving, I'm the one they're going to come to.
Mhm.
But then to lose both my younger brothers, they each died of different types of cancer. We grew up in Walla Walla where there was a lot of
Mhm.
uh, they worked in the
Yeah.
field. And remember the Hanford
Mhm.
um, downwind? That's the Tri-Cities down into the Walla Walla Valley. I don't know if you girls know that area, but
Yeah.
anyway, so those are my,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm here holding the family. I'm me.
Mhm. When your mom and then
Well,
subsequently your brothers died,
Mm.
did you jump back into some of the grieving you were doing with your dad? Did it kind of resurface?
I think I've moved beyond him. I don't have that warmth, love for him that I had growing up. I mean, it was adoration. I was his little girl.
Mhm.
So I've been more just
Right.
separate from him.
Good. Good. Yeah. That's powerful.
well, sometimes you have to step back
Yeah,
away. It doesn't mean that you still don't hold your dad to in your heart, but you also have to be healthy
I know
yourself.
that.
And one of the things that we talked about with somebody else, earlier in one of our other podcasts was it is strange to feel at the age of my last parent died when I was in my 50s to feel like an orphan.
Yeah,
You know, I don't know what kind of, no matter how dysfunctional your relationship might be, if it's got some value to it, then you feel like your parent has your back, no matter what's going on. And it is weird to all of a sudden feel like I'm it.
yeah,
I'm it, and especially with you having lost your
yeah,
brothers.
yeah.
Tough to feel like you're standing alone.
Yeah. And another thing I noticed, um, after my mom died, which there was a whole story behind that, but um, was that I realized how much I never really had been nurtured. You know what I mean? I thought I'd been nurtured, but
Mhm.
it wasn't really what I needed.
Right,
And so, you know, it kind of like you have to learn to nurture yourself and do what's good for you and be yourself.
right.
You know, sometimes in your childhood, you don't get to be yourself. You have to perform and, you know, do what the expectations are. And like you say, don't make waves. You
That's
know,
right.
don't break those eggshells that you're walking through.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. Yeah.
I really appreciate both.
Yeah, well,
Thank you.
in our lifetime, we all were taught to be polite,
Mhm.
and I understand showing respect to people, but I also understand about having a hard time telling your parent. One of the things that my dad used to do is he would pinch my fat. You know, he would come up and pinch my fat. And I finally sat down and I had this conversation with him. I said, Dad, this is how it makes me feel. And he says, well, I just want you to be the best that you can be. But I was being very brave at that point, Cynthia, because I would not have ever told my dad that before. And I finally felt like, you know what? Accept me and love me for who I
Yeah, yeah.
am. And don't, you know, but it was a tough, but I remember having that conversation with him and having to share, hey, it doesn't feel good. I don't like you like it when you
Right.
do that.
And it to
It
me,
makes me feel less of a person.
yeah, it's too bad that we have to come so far into adulthood to have permission to be seen and heard.
That's
But
right.
it's very typical. And our parents never got to be seen and heard, you know, and they did the very best they could.
Well,
But it's, you know, it's such
and I caution that we not carry that over to our kids, because I catch myself going, oh, guys, you know, being able to be supportive in a way that still is not demeaning to my children, because I don't want to ever do
Have
that.
you girls, I'm sorry, that's my generation. We're not supposed to call each other girls. Have you women read?
oh my God.
That's okay.
I've been telling her all about, I'm working on that book.
This is so good.
Oh, it
It's
is.
so good. And I have my, I took the cover off, so the book is on my chair, and it's the way I start my morning now, is just reading another chapter of Let Them. And you guys, it is so healing and so,
She's so good.
oh, it's just really, really wonderful.
And I mean, the grief and loss, we're going to be working on this, but the new piece that jumped out at me, because I have a friend who's really working with it now, is her chapters on adult friendships.
Yes, I'm just thrilled.
And I want to do a series on that.
I think it'll be fabulous, you guys.
Because I mean, because it is different, and it does take, you know, you have to go first, and, you know, all her stuff and her pillars, her 3 pillars are just awesome. And I want to do a book study with her, but I want to do a series on Meeting on the Bridge.
Right.
But, I mean, so I told
Cynthia, why don't you tell us who the author is? Let Them.
Mel
Who's
Robbins.
the author? Our visitors
Mel
are
Robbins. She has a podcast too.
okay.
I'll hold it up again for you, Cindy.
Okay.
Yeah, and
In case somebody wants to be able to, in case somebody wants
I'm
to be
so
able to
glad you
access
mentioned that, Cynthia.
Oh,
It is a real healing book. You know, I just love it, and I want to do a book study.
I
But
think
like I say, I thought I'd put the book study on the other, you know, not Meeting on the Bridge, but our other little piece, and see what, because it is so healing, and she uses such great examples. In fact, I just texted Sandy yesterday or the day before and told her I wanted to start this series on adult friendships.
that'd be
And
fabulous.
Sandy and and I don't know about you because I don't know this much about you, so you can listen to the question. Sandy has a lot of adult friends, and she's had some long-term friends, you know, from way back. And Sandy, the 3 pillars are these. So I'm sorry, I'm moving into this, Cynthia, your turn. The first one is proximity. So you know, I live next door, I live in the same town, we can see each other. The second one is, okay, I'm not remembering it. Let me go to the third one. The third one is energy, that there, you know, there's a spark, or there's something about you I like. And the middle one is
Wasn't that history?
timing.
Right.
So you know, we're all in this phase of our life. We're getting to know each other on the bridge here, you know, becoming friends. And those are the 3 pillars of adult friendships. And I just want to go into a little deeper than she does, not just how to promote adult friendships, because we're all social and we need them. But, you know, what are the factors of long-term friendships? There might be some other factors around that. So, you know, Cynthia, how many friends do you have that go way back?
Mine are proximity.
Yeah, proximity. And maybe timing.
One woman from my high school puts out a Facebook page, and she tells about deaths. College friends I have to drive to see, and I do much better. I have a lot of women friends, but they're all around here.
Yeah.
And then I'll do Zoom. If I can see you, I can keep up a long-term friendship, but to just chat on the phone, I don't do well. I need to see you.
Right. And it's that connection and energy that's important. And, you know, we're doing proximity friendships right here. They're not
Right.
quite the same,
Right.
but it's kind of the regularity of having somebody to talk to. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to go into. But I really am so glad you mentioned that book.
Well, I'm glad you introduced me to Sandy because I know you, Sue. We met each other through
A couple of years ago through LinkedIn.
LinkedIn, and then you introduced me to Sandy, and I really value both of you women. Thank you so much for having this discussion and opening it up and letting other people.
You too, Cynthia.
Yeah. So Cynthia, what is, you talked about the lesson that you learned. What would be a piece of advice of somebody who's, going through guilt and anger right now? You got any little words of wisdom for us?
Because of suicide or just guilt?
Well, anything. I mean, it could be,
Yeah.
I went through anger when my mom died, and it wasn't about suicide. So
Yeah. I'll tell you, let it flow. Let it flow. Get angry. Go take your walks and shake your fist at heaven. I think my mom is a spirit. Anybody. I don't really believe we're sitting up in a cloud in heaven, but on golden streets. But and another thing, Sue, is I don't go backwards. What's over is over. I'll do my best to bless and forgive and process it myself, but I'm moving on. I don't have time to worry about stuff that's over with. And I don't carry the baggage. I won't carry the baggage.
And that's really a lot of the spirit of the Let Them book.
Yeah, it is.
Just let them be who they are, and they get to suffer the consequences.
It's over. It's them. And then Sandy, she takes you into the next step. Let them. And sometimes I have written Mel and said, well, what if, but then her next one is let me. And she teaches you to stand up and be empowered yourself and take what do I want to have come out of this?
Yeah. Sandy, it reminds me.
Well, the older I get, the more I realize I have no control over other people.
None.
I only can control my response and how I handle
That's what her
situations.
message is.
Yeah. And we have a worksheet we call the self-differentiation worksheet, which is really just the same process of when something happens. It's up in my amygdala, my reaction brain, my amygdala, I'm sorry, it's back there. And it goes, so what am I thinking? Well, I'm thinking she's a jerk. What am I feeling? I'm feeling angry. What do I want? Well, what do I want? I want to be able to talk to her when we go to the, So then what am I thinking? I'm thinking I want to talk to her. What am I feeling? I'm feeling curious because, what do you want? I want to have a conversation with her. I mean, so it's that unpacking process of getting up to your big brain up here.
That's really good. That's really good.
And so it's very much what she's talking about too, although she goes in, she's got such great stories, I tell you. And it's all about her, and she's just so open about it. So it's
very open.
Yeah.
But Sandy, you capsulized it. You put it into the conclusion.
Yeah, absolutely.
And she hadn't even read it.
So Cynthia, do you think that you came to acceptance, or are you still working on the acceptance part of the grieving? Or, I mean, I know you'll cycle around and stuff, but when did you come to acceptance of letting that go with your dad? Was there something that you had to do to get to that point?
Yeah, for me, it was giving up caring. I really don't hold him in the heart space that I used to just worship him. I mean, he was big father figure, and I was the oldest, and I was his little girl, and so I really had to.
Yeah.
Well, I still cry when I talk about it. I don't know.
Well, you still have a wound, but you said it when you said, "I don't go backwards."
I can't, and so that's part of the indifference. I feel a little embarrassed to say I'm indifferent, but I just don't want to feel anger. It doesn't do me any good, and I have to forgive. So therefore, I just become indifferent. It's okay. He's just a nice, good guy, and he was my dad. But he's
right. You have to. That's good. I know what you feel about the word indifferent, but he's the one who caused that indifference.
It's his thing. It was
Yeah, it's the let them. Yeah, let him, because he chose to be who he
Well,
was, and then you've chosen to move forward, which is healthy.
Yeah.
That's part of being healed.
well, I would,
Yeah.
yeah, I would say, Cynthia, that it felt very selfish for your dad to do that. It felt like you were only thinking about yourself, Dad. You weren't thinking about what you were going to be leaving behind for everybody else to have to kind of pick up, other than actually the practical of having a place for his body and that kind of thing. I mean, that seems like a man problem solving and that kind of thing, but it would seem selfish from your perspective, I would think, because it's just like, Dad, look at how many people you left bleeding. And one of the things that my daughter has used, Angie has talked about taking a pause in relationships, and that has really been a helpful thing for me to understand that I can take a pause from a relationship, whether it's taking a pause, and then processing it, and maybe somewhere down the line, I will be able to receive that information differently. But right now, I have to take a pause. That's where I am right now, to be healthy myself. Because if I don't take care of who I am, I can't be there for other people.
Yeah, that's the differentiation. You differentiated yourself from whatever the issue is, and that's healthy. That's healthy. So good job. So as we conclude, we always conclude with what is one takeaway from this conversation. So Cynthia, have you got a takeaway from today?
I think it was bringing in that book, Let Them, learning that it was his issue. Then you're disappointed with his issue. I felt my disappointment with his issue, but learning to just say it's not my fault.
No,
it's not my fault.
No.
And I do love him as a man. I can look at him as a human being and say he was a wonderful, and he gave so much to his state and his community. He was always a community service person. So that's probably my take.
Well, Cynthia, you can love somebody and not like what their choices are. And I think you have to separate the do from the who.
Yeah.
And so that doesn't mean that you didn't see the value in him or understand how many beautiful things he brought to the world, but you didn't like that choice.
Yeah. So Sandy, what's your takeaway?
Oh, I would say the takeaway is that there's a real balancing act in being able to care enough and still be able to be healthy in how we handle the connections that we have in our life.
Good. My takeaway,
and I think that's what Cynthia. That's what.
Yeah, is the powerful thing you did that has nothing to do with your dad did, but standing up for yourself. Declaring your agency, and that was such a healthy step. And it's totally not your responsibility how he received it.
Yes, thank you. Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, darling. We're gonna sign off, but we'll see you on the other side. Okay, hang on.
Thank you, Cynthia, for sharing with us. That was an impactful story, and somebody needed to hear it. That's why we do this. Somebody needed to know.
I said I would do it because I knew somebody else is going to benefit.
Absolutely. Yes, we'll talk more about it in a second.
Love you.